All right, off we go. Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Knollcast. Bud, look forward to what we have to go over today. Have a little bit of recruiting. Get your thoughts out at being an Elite 11. Going to break down the NBA draft, play by play, pick by pick. Just kidding. We won't be doing that.
I don't care about that at all. Now that the Magic didn't get, I don't even like the NBA, but if the Magic got number one, I was going to buy season tickets to take my boys because, apparently Victor is just. Ryan Russillo was saying there's only like 2 players or 3 players in the entire league that you wouldn't trade for this guy right now.
Okay.
So I was like, okay,
yeah, that's something else. Love that.
Oh man, appreciate everybody tapping in live. Off the jump, hog hunt.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're doing some things. Had a great time. I'm tired in a manner that's impossible to even describe, but went down, did some outdoor fundraising for the Battle's End, and had a couple players join us. Incredible opportunity for a lot of different people, and a great experience. So I am a little tired, but I appreciate your flexibility with scheduling this. But the Knollcast is back together. Very much enjoyed your recruiting focus show of last week. We'll have a little bit of recruiting here in this one, and some great Patreon and listener questions as well. So with that, as always, we'll thank the OG sponsors, Tarpon Sellers, Louisiana Hot Sauce, 2 the greatest sponsors you could ever hope for. Tarpon Sellers, 20% off use of code Knollcast. And also, when you're on your 4th case of Tarpon Sellers order and with a Knollcast coupon code, you can fall back on, I believe I should know my own coupon code. This is stupid and embarrassing. I think the Battle's End also will get you 20% off at Tarpon Sellers, as well, as we're fortunate to be able to announce a corporate partnership there as with those guys. So love Florida State football, and great to continue to be able to work with people who are passionate about the subject matter. With that, Bud, let's jump right into it, man.
All right, so dealer's choice. We can talk Luke Cromanoke at Elite 11. We can talk Nick Saban's comments recently, both his whining and then also maybe some of the SEC's decision to stay at 8 and what that might mean for the Noles. We can talk Mike Loxley's comments, which I thought were extremely relevant to FSU. I don't know if you caught these hasn't got a lot of attention. And then, last week's recruiting show did generate a whole lot of Patreon related questions. So I was like, okay, we can. They kind of center around 1 or 2 topics, and we won't shy away from them. We'll take all the questions, and I think some people are kind of bridge jumping, maybe shouldn't be, and others maybe a little misguided on the other side. So I guess we'll see. What do you want to go first, man?
Let me go ahead and get your thoughts on what Luke looked like out at Elite 11. What your takeaway from that was obviously, look, we're in the 3rd week in June. There's not a ton of stuff out there, but I did love kind of the content wars that played out over evaluation of quarterbacks at Elite 11. So, besides you being a business partner and co-host of mine, you happen to be one of the more informed people in recruiting in the world, and always happy to lean on your opinion. And we, as a podcast, are fortunate to be able to have a one of our co-hosts who flew out there and actually saw the thing live. So very interested to hear your takeaways.
It was a good time. A little bit chilly. I don't know if you've seen the sunburn, man. I've got a crazy. It's 5 days ago now, but I think I just overestimated how much hair I have and underestimated my forehead, and there's like maybe a half an inch strip that just got totally nuked, and it was quarter zip weather out there. It was really kind of chilly, especially during the nighttime practice sessions. Redondo Beach High School, which is obviously right there at Redondo Beach, Union High School, sits down kind of in a valley, and it gets cold. Now, 2 years ago, I actually I had to go to the auto parts store up the road to buy hand warmers for our guys that were sitting up top shooting video, because it was just like crazy cold, and you couldn't really feel your hands, which is tough to operate a camera because nobody brought gloves to SoCal in June. But it was good. I thought Luke was one of the most impressive guys there. I know 24/7 Sports, I think ranked him third in their final, or third or fourth in their final, which is, that's upper quartile of the guys that got invited, right? There were 20 guys out there. I think 3 or 4 of them just don't belong, but they're always going to invite 20 because they don't want to they don't want to say the 11th kid finished last, right? So if you invite 20, it's like, okay, the 11 is basically the upper half. Bama's kid, Julian Sane, won the MVP. I came away from the event saying the guy that I thought was the most impressive overall is still Dylan Raiola, who's heading to Georgia and transferring up your way to Buford, by the way. He
Headed
announced that.
headed to Georgia, literally. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah, where he will be teammates with KJ Bolden. So, yeah. Anyway, I thought Croman Hoke looked really good. Now, this quarterback class is not as good as last year's quarterback class. I got asked. I was doing Mike Golick's show, or junior, but the senior was on there, and they're like, "How would you stack these against one another?" And I think, like, if I had to mash them together, like 4 out of the top 5 would come from last year's class, right? Like last year was a special class, and you can make an argument that like Aiden Childs is just as good as anybody in this class, except for maybe Raiola, but specifically on Croman Hoke, right? The motion's not funky, as I think I've known, but like just stacking up to everybody else, fairly clean motion. Guy has good velocity on his ball. He doesn't have a release that makes me feel like you're gonna have to change it. You know, he seemed to know where to go with the football and was able to make some quick decisions, which was good in the 7-on-7. And ultimately, like, he's a high upside guy, right? Like this is I think he's the best quarterback prospect since Jameis. Now, will the ratings shake out that way? I don't know. I really liked Malik Henry before things kind of went south for him. Like, I thought Malik Henry's sophomore and junior stuff was very good. I was not a DeAndre Francois guy. I didn't trust the accuracy. Remember all the crap we got for that, by the way? It's like this 50% passer in high school is or less is concerning. You have to be able to hit open guys. In fairness, for any Gator fans watching, Croman Hoke did have a poor showing in the pro day portion, which is you make 20 throws. They try to test different areas of your game. And I went back and watched it because I recorded the whole thing. And I didn't see like one consistent mechanical flaw. To me, it looked like he was pressing, as a couple guys did. Once they missed a throw, it seemed like they were trying to, make every throw perfect. But very strong on day 1, very strong on day 3. Day 2 was a bit of a disappointment. Seems like a pretty mature kid. I've been able to talk to him a lot, and if you're FSU, you need to land a high level quarterback commit. I'm not saying that Brock Glenn or Duffy cannot turn into high level quarterbacks, but high level prospect, they are not. Croman Hoke is. He's a different level of athlete, and I think potential than those two guys, and he also seems really committed to recruiting for the Noles. So, I mean, if you're Mike Norvell and staff, like, you got to be just over the moon with how your quarterback recruiting is going, right now. And I don't know if Elite 11 put out their rankings. I trust our stuff, at 24/7 Sports a lot. But I mean, we had them top 3, top 4, and basically everybody that watched him was like, "Yeah, I see it." And the guy's only started 1 year of high school football. This is big time. Ricardo says, how big is the gap between Raiola, Sane, and Luke, considering he's played less quarterback than the first 2? That's a good question. Like, if I made the rankings, Luke would not be in 5-star consideration right now. I'd want to see more out of him, right? More consistent, more game exposure, have an even bigger senior year than he did as a junior. I think Sane and Raiola have proved it more in terms of upside and on-field performance. But yeah, I to me, it's a really impressive package. He was also rooting for other guys out there. I was standing next to his dad during DJ Lagway's 7-on-7. And some of Lagway's guys weren't running hard at all. Like, it was the last one of the event. That's as Florida's QB commit, kid who's, pretty raw, but has big time ability. And like, they were rooting for each other, but I know they probably want like Florida State battle, but like they all want each other to do well, man. He's a high level kid. Seems like a pretty mature kid. Like, you look at him, he's kind of got like a baby face still, and a guy that you can tell will probably grow into his body. So FSU really doing a nice job with quarterback recruiting. Norvell and Tokars deserve some credit there for sure.
Yep, fortuitous to be able to get involved with Luke at the period that you did, and very highly thought after quarterback prospect at this time. I will
We should have
say,
got like Allstate to sponsor that segment, like quarterback recruiting. Allstate in good hands. You know, no free ads.
I love it. Absolutely.
Sorry, you will say I interrupted you for a dumb joke.
Not all that important of a thing, but our friend Brandon Adams at Dog Nation, a guy that I used to work with at 680, and started a very, very successful and large independent team podcast covering the dogs. And I always enjoy getting his opinion on things. He brought something up to me, and this is like a not a massive deal, but Georgia has not signed a 5-star prospect from Gwinnett County since 2014. Bud, it's kind of interesting. Not
Wow.
what you would think. For those that aren't aware, Gwinnett County is a large metro Atlanta county that's on the east side of Atlanta, and I only point that out because it's on the east side of Atlanta, meaning it is very close to Athens. It's like 50-minute ride from parts of Gwinnett County, and that's not something that will stay the case for long. They've just lost. A couple kids have chosen to go to Alabama, a couple kids other places, but interesting that it's been 9 years since Georgia had signed a 5-star from one of the more popular and talented counties in the country when it comes to high school football.
I talked to some guys who know Georgia well and have been through there, private quarterback coaches and different folks. Georgia thinks it's going to have a real chance to break its own record of 15 draft picks this upcoming draft. Like, there's a real chance Georgia won a national title last year in what was like a pseudo rebuilding year.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Which
big ups to Ohio State's kicker, because without you, it just wouldn't have been possible, my man.
Also, big ups to Nick Saban for wasting 2 years of Bryce Young and failing to win a title. Which brings us to our next topic here. Nick Saban's comments, him whining about not getting in the playoff, and we will bring this back to FSU. I couldn't pass the transition there. He was like, I got told that we'd be favored over 3 out of 4 teams in the playoff. Like, why aren't we in the playoff? And to me, it seemed very like not typical Saban to make these kind of comments, because usually he's so process focused and focused on like, how do we get better? How do we get better moving forward? And I'm like, yeah, but you were also favored over LSU and over Tennessee, and you played a nail biting 1-score game at home against a terrible Texas A&M team, and also screwed around in a couple other games, and probably lose the Texas game if Texas quarterback doesn't get knocked out. So like, you have no good wins. Other than that, though, like it's a really good playoff case as a 2-win non-division champion. But those comments came from an interview. Did you watch the Joel Klatt interview?
I have not seen it. No.
I only watched parts of it. I didn't have time for the whole thing. But pairing those with the SEC deciding to stay at 8 games, I think there's a number of reasons the SEC did decide to stay at 8 games. But I think the way that the schools wanting to stay at 8 convinced the schools wanting to go to 9 was basically like, hey, wait a year. Let's put pressure on the playoff to make some kind of like RPI or strength of schedule formula, right? Before we go to 9, because they are concerned that the additional strength of schedule will not be recognized by the committee, which I think is a valid concern, man. Like, they typically just rank these teams based on losses within certain ranges, obviously. When I'm doing my playoff odds, I allow like an extra tolerance of like a 0.5 loss for SEC teams. So there is some of that baked into the committee's consideration. But with respect to FSU, if like this Bama series and this Georgia series does get canceled, which I know we've kind of discussed before that it certainly could, given the SEC's actions for some of these other existing non-conference series that had to be canceled, including like, Oklahoma's not going to play Georgia this year, and Michigan, was it Michigan, Texas, I think it is, or one of those got swiped off as well, and a few others. Like right now, this year, FSU's schedule strength is like 42nd. It's basically Clemson, LSU, and everybody else on the schedule drags it down. Now, if Florida and Miami get their act together, that's different. That will change, and I think you kind of have to project that maybe one of them will, if not both, eventually, probably. But does FSU need to be proactive in trying to schedule well enough to make sure they can get into the playoff as a second ACC team in years in which they don't win the ACC? Or like, are we worried about the ACC being a consistent one bid league in this thing, given the schedule strength concerns? Like, if they get their way, Big Ten and SEC are going to dominate the schedule strength metrics unless you're really proactive in going out and scheduling non-conference opponents. And should you care? Like, if you don't manage to win a shitty ACC, do you actually really want to be in the playoff? No, I mean, I know we laugh, but like,
no. I mean, it's a good question.
half these
Absolutely,
teams
yeah.
aren't trying.
Wasn't laughing at the question as much as the way you framed it. I'd like it. I just think this situation is going to resolve itself. I don't, I don't know that conference expansion's around the immediate corner, but I don't think it's going to be all that long. And it's probably not the hypothetical that you're asking me to schedule around. And I agree with you. If you really think you're going to be in the ACC for a while, then yeah, you probably do need to have something else out there. I just don't know that you're even going to be able to get it. I mean, I think these scheduling requirements and models that some of these conferences are going to fall into, I don't know how many big time non-conference games you're really going to be able to schedule. I think you're going to have 9, perhaps even 10 conference games at some point. So, maybe that 10th game is 5 years down the road or something. I'm not saying it's going to happen immediately. But you pay a lot for content because you want the content and you want to monetize it. That's where the content is. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. Did you see these Mike Loxley comments?
I did see those. Those are very interesting.
I
mean,
wanted to pick your
certainly,
brain on this as somebody who literally runs like one of the most successful collectives out there.
so there's a I don't want to say a battle behind the scenes at every school because I don't know that there is, nor does it have to be. You can the fundraising, facility building apparatus, whether for Florida State it's Seminole Boosters, it's different at each school. And NIL, they don't necessarily have to be entities, and I'm very proud of the relationship that Florida State has behind the scenes with every entity that needs to interact, communicate to be successful. So please don't read into these words as me talking about what's going on domestically. But there is thought that, there's only so many resources. You're going to start to, what can you really do? Can you build the building and be competitive from an NIL standpoint? At a school like Maryland, I think you've got to be better than competitive. It falls back to the institutions, your historical draw. At Florida State, you have to be competitive. You damn better believe you have to be competitive, but you don't have to be the most competitive. If a premier Big Ten team is offering, you know, 1, do you have to get to 1? Uh, I don't know, but do you need to probably get to 0.85? Yeah, you probably do. You've got to be in the area. So, Loxley's comments in and of itself were something to the effect of what $150 million facility would be nice, but recruits will get dressed wherever they want to if it means that they have a 25K NIL deal.
Oh no, it's worse.
Okay.
They already moved into the facility.
Okay.
So it's done.
Yes.
And he's like, it's nice, but the timing on this is bad. Recruits don't really care about that stuff anymore. They would get dressed in a trash can for $25,000.
Okay.
Which, if you're a Maryland booster, I think, and you donated to this big facility, you're probably like, hey, Mike Loxley, like, bro, seriously?
Yeah. That's that is tough to say, particularly at a place like Maryland.
Yeah, it's brazen for a coach to come out. Like, I think the fact that we have active head coaches saying this kind of stuff now shows how much bullshit it is that we need facilities to recruit.
Yeah.
Like, I really like it. To me, it's always kind of been,
Yeah.
Like, your place sucks, but like it's. I thought it was always kind of a house of cards argument.
Yeah, it can't. And it's maybe to a lesser extent what we just said with NIL. They can't suck, but you need to have decent facilities. But Florida State's most historical recruiting loss ever was for a kid to go get his ankles taped in a cafeteria. Okay. So there's only they only matter so much, I guess. And obviously it's case dependent, and if you're one of 5 schools that's recruiting a kid and everybody else has cutting edge facilities and has obviously had a 10-year run out on spending on some of the more latest bells and whistles, and you don't have anything, then yeah, that might become an issue. But relationships with coach and staff is always going to be number one, and then people can kind of put their own list together as to where NIL facilities and other stuff falls at this point in time. And also um there's NIL and there's also traditional recruiting. No,
Mm-hmm.
people do that differently. A lot of schools that love to tell you that they don't get as heavily involved in NIL are still real heavily in, traditional recruiting. So there's uh there's different representations at any institution, and you can certainly figure out, that of what is most appealing for you as an individual recruit.
Our friend and former colleague Stephen Godfrey wrote a really good book, or a really good piece on traditional recruiting. If you guys
Yes.
want
Yes.
to
One
Google
of
that,
one of the better pieces that's ever been written on said subject matter.
some people thought it was fake. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's told that story now, how the SEC basically accused him of making it up. Yeah, okay.
well,
And then all the stuff came out.
yeah, Godfrey's got a hell of an imagination.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Oh man. Okay, let's take this question from Dark Knight Mentality. He says, "Why do we care who FSU plays in the non-conference? The key is winning the ACC and getting to the playoffs and try to make a run from there." Right? Completely agree. Yeah, like there's no doubt. But the reason I asked Graham the question was, in years in which you don't win the ACC, you would still like to be able to make the expanded playoff if you feel like you're a good football team, right? Now, you might say, well, if you don't win the ACC, you suck. But like that's not necessarily true. Clemson is recruiting very well right now and appears to uh, be attempting to change in certain areas. Maybe not the portal, but like they did go out and get a offensive coordinator who seems to know what he's doing. And so like my thought was, do you worry about this being a one bid league, to steal the basketball term, in the 12-team playoff format, if the rest of the league isn't really trying? Like, it's kind of my contention, right?
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, and in order to offset that, if they're going to go to a more strength of schedule criteria, which I think they're going to do, I think that's one of the reasons the SEC didn't go to 8, along with all the infighting and maybe, I don't know, maybe promises being made that not all the membership was checked upon before they made them, kind of Kevin Warren style. But if that happens, if we go to more of like a strength of schedule based metric, at present, if these SEC's rivalries, but the SEC non-conference home and homes get scratched, FSU's not going to rate very well strength schedule wise, unless Florida or Miami get their act together. They
Yeah.
kind of need that to happen. But that's why I asked it, Dark Knight. I appreciate the live question, certainly.
As great to have live engagement, and I'll just throw in that again, as long as this conversation is taking place with Florida State in this conference, I can just tell you from a little bit of a better look behind the scenes in the economics and business of the sport, dude. You need a second brand to put on that home schedule, particularly when it's the Miami year, if this is what Miami is right now. I mean,
Yeah.
thank goodness that all these guys are returning, and you've got one of the better, you may have one of the better 5 or 6 teams in college football next year, because otherwise that schedule is depressing, the home schedule that you would otherwise have to offer. I mean, if this is a team that's projected to go 8-4 with that home schedule, um, it's a totally different situation for the economies that tie themselves to Florida State athletics and Florida State football in particular.
Including some of our sponsors, obviously.
Very much so.
I agree with you. Now, people do show up for winners, almost regardless of who you're beating.
Mhm.
It seems, But yeah, no, Dark Knight said thanks in the chat. Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Something else we appreciate is if you guys want to come see us August 12th in Tampa for the Tampa Knowles season kickoff we are going to be the VIP speakers. And if you go and if you check in the show notes, man, promo code NOLCAST gets you in, special rate, VIP include. I was talking to Mike Helquist yesterday, giving the rundown on everything in the VIP package. Do we get this, by the way? Like, since we are the speakers, I think like I would like this. This interests me quite a bit. Top shelf open bar, food, private performances from the marching chiefs, previous FSU players, and an automatic entry into a raffle for 2 LSU tickets in the lower bowl between the 30 and 40-yard line, which is a $600 face value. And if you have checked StubHub,
maybe quite more than that even. I mean,
no,
that's
face value.
okay.
If you, what do you think the StubHub value is on tickets in the lower bowl on the 30 to 40? Like,
yeah, look, I can
two tickets there is probably what, $2,000?
Probably somewhere in that. I was going to say somewhere between $1,600 and $1,800, based off
Yeah,
what I looked at last week.
I talked to a buddy of mine yesterday at the golf club. He was looking for tickets. He was wondering if I had a hookup. I was like, for this game, I really don't.
All right, I will tell you one thing
The
that
top row is $200 each in the whole stadium.
I will never, from my position, the battle's in, share like conversations that I have with parents other than this one. And this is a good indicator as to the level of demand for tickets. No, I've had a couple kids' parents ask me if I could help them get additional tickets for this game. That's where you are with ticket demand. And I can tell you, our friends at the ticketing office and everything else are having a challenge on their hands. This is a great challenge. It's the challenge that you want, but you've got a lot of people that have given to Florida State for a long time that probably think they should have a few more tickets than they do for this LSU game. It's great to have a ticket this much in demand, and it's just great to be back at a level of the sport where you're literally playing what could potentially be a playoff game as the week 1 kickoff. That's incredible. So
yeah, I know got a lot of friends coming to town, and they're kind of doing the thing where it's like, all right, like, honey, normally like you'd go to the game with me, but like maybe like, do we, and like, so my wife obviously went to LSU, so she's going. Like, she's like, I'm not playing that. I'm like, well, babe, we're a little different, but yeah, totally. It's going to be interesting. Patreon.com/Nolecast. Our inbox was full. You want to hit some of these?
Let's do it. I'll try to take us through a couple of these here real quickly. Larry asks, I listen to other media members who don't project Byers or Cypress to start, yet they think Florida State's a national contender, yet they think FSU is actually a national title contender. How does that make sense? Why is there reason to think that some of the other options at offensive line can hold up?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, should you, like, I tell you, my projections include Cypress and Byers being what FSU thought they were when they went after them in the transfer portal. If they're not, like, I know you can like guys like Jerry and Jones and Washington, and in theory, like, if Scott's healthy, obviously, like, we've had Robert on the show, like, the guy just has not been able to stay healthy for long stretches, which I think has hampered his development. He actually has 2 years left, right? So I'm not writing him off, but I do think 2024 upside, based on what I've seen these guys do in their college careers so far, I think for this team to be all it can be, I think you need to realize the athleticism and get these guys right and get them in the lineup of Byers and Cypress. Like, if Byers and Cypress are not starting, I'm not picking FSU to win the ACC. I think you need those guys to be high-level players for you. That's why you went out in the portal and attacked it, because I don't think you had high-level players at those positions, to be totally frank. So I don't think they're a true national title contender regardless. I think that's kind of crazy. Like, we just said to open the show, Georgia thinks it's going to break its record for draft picks in a single year at 15.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, what, 7 starters not getting drafted in this year. Plus, like, we know Michael Williams and Malachi Starks are probably both first or second round picks, almost certainly, if they stay healthy for them. So, to be a natty contender, you're looking at almost everybody on your starting lineups getting drafted. And, as we cited the stat the other day, and an average of 7 first rounders and you're 2 deep. But, like, Yeah, I think they need Byers and Cypress to start and play well to be all they can be. I think your ceiling is more limited with some of the other guys, and that's even though I know the staff likes some of these other guys too. I think there's a reason you went out and got them.
In my opinion, they're both starters, and I've had kids on the team who would potentially not be a starter because they are a starter, particularly in the defensive back room. Acknowledge that Cypress is probably going to be a starter. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't. It's a little bit of an interesting narrative around, like, I don't know. Maybe people thought that he was just going to come in and be Dion in spring practice or something like that. I don't. Fintrell Cypress is going to be a hell of a player for Florida State, and he's going to be a starter. And Byers, there's not too many other dudes in that room that look like that guy, who are that aren't like that don't have more to go through their development cycle to be ready to start playing.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way.
Right.
Okay.
Simmons, Armella, long term,
Yeah.
maybe Jalen.
Yeah. Those dudes are going to be starting.
Okay. That's my thought too, right? Like I wouldn't overly read it to the acclamation that is spring practice. You know, I don't have any indication that they feel like they missed on those guys. You know, and I was just up there. So yeah. All right. Now we have a huge wall of questions that are basically just like they're all asking kind of different things. I guess we can take them individually and just kind of if your question was copy pasted into the Google Doc later, you may get a shorter answer because we've already answered it somewhat. But you can, I guess, since it's recruiting, if you want to ask me most of these and then kind of chime in where you see fit on them.
Yeah, sure. Paul says, shouldn't Florida State be burying Miami and Florida in recruiting? To me, this feels like potentially a huge missed opportunity.
Well, I mean, look, Florida had a great weekend. Obviously, they added. I mean, they're up to number 3rd in the country on 24/7 Sports. They have, 2 5-stars, 9 4-stars on the composite. I think even a little bit better than that in the 247 rankings. Florida State is 11th right now with 1 5-star and 7 4-stars in the composite. 24/7 is a little bit lower on some of those guys. Which before you get on me or 24/7 about this, I will note. Do you know what service had the highest rating last year on all 5 of FSU's top 5 commits? It was 24/7 Sports. So I'm pretty sure there's no grand conspiracy to hold down FSU's rankings at 24/7 Sports. Okay. There's year to year differences of opinion on some players. My quibble with this question is Miami is not smoking FSU in recruiting right now. They are 26. They have 3 4-stars, 3 4-stars and 9 3-stars. So did Miami smoke you in recruiting last year? Yes. Are they doing so far this year? No. If you have concern about this, it's not that you're getting smoked. It's that you're not doing the smoking. And that, yes, like I think it's very fair to say in recruiting right now, through the month of June, cancellations happening by the minute for this big official visit weekend FSU has going on. Now, they did get KJ Bolden and Jeremiah Smith on campus this week, which, like the top safety in the country and the top receiver in the country, who's like the best receiver in a couple of years out of high school, both on campus. Now, obviously, I think Bolden's probably going to go to Georgia. And I think Jeremiah Smith will likely stick with Ohio State. But if he doesn't, maybe because, something, has happened with Ohio State's receivers coach and offensive coordinator, who are one and the same. Brian Hartline gets another job. Maybe you're in a position to be a really good 2 there. Obviously, I know Luke has, connected some with him out there trying to chat him up at Elite 11, and like all the quarterbacks are recruiting, right? Like, duh, that's everybody in the world would want to throw to him. But yeah, man, this is a missed opportunity, right? Like Florida State, I think they're doing a good job recruiting on the offensive side of the football. It's a poor offensive line crop nationally and within the state. So that's probably the only spot they're not recruiting well on offense right now. But reasonably, there's not really guys out there that I would ding them that they should go get. Zendamela hurt. when he committed to USC. Obviously, it appears they misread that situation as to what the important factors were there. And but Atkins is a guy on staff who I have confidence in because I've seen him go out and fight big time battles and win them before. But they don't have big time recruiters elsewhere on the staff, in my opinion. I'm not second guessing the Randy Shannon promotion. I first guessed it. I said it was a bad move. And I think Mike, for the most part, makes good staff moves. But that one is one that, to me is a non-competitive hire. Florida should not be beating you in recruiting, okay? Given FSU's success on the field, given their strong NIL reputation, right? Like the fact that you don't see all these negative stories out there about it. And they seem to have, obviously you guys have relationships with a ton of players on the team. Like there's very obvious the opportunities are available once you get on campus. They should be putting distance between themselves and the Gators and Canes, and they're not. Like frankly, like their high school stuff right now at certain positions is kind of embarrassing. So yeah, like this is a missed opportunity, and it won't hurt you this year. It won't hurt you next year probably, but like 2 years down the road, you're like, yeah, man, that's a missed opportunity, and it's going to cost you at some point if things don't change.
Yeah, I just speaking to the broader fan base, I just wouldn't get worried about recruiting if the themes and things that you're saying in June are present in the first week of December, then worry about it. You're in a really good place for the first time in a long time. Like you can slowly build in recruiting, and your appeal is going to be there. You have a more consistent trajectory with which to build relationships on, is what I'm trying to say. So like if you're a program that's worried about going 7-5, then you need to get, in my opinion, as many horses in the barn as you can and then try to hang on to them, right? If you're a school like Florida State that thinks they're going to have a very successful season, then you need to be in a good place. You need to have a good relationship, and then you need to let the season speak for itself. I'm not just look. The recruiting that takes place in May, June, and July is exceptionally important, and I'm not downplaying it. Particularly, I would say that's the biggest change in the early signing day period, but is the critical factor of the summer months. Like you've got to be there. You've got to have that relationship, because once the season starts, yeah, you might be able to get the kid down every once in a while, but it's tough to really make up significant ground once the high school football season starts. If you've got a kid that's signed in December, and at this point, it feels like damn near every kid signs in December. So it's important. I would not be losing sleep over it right now. I think Florida State's going to do very well when it comes to high school recruiting. And obviously the staff has shown a level of fluency in operating in the portal that maybe nobody else in the country has shown.
Completely agree about that. Somebody who we know follows recruiting a ton, our friends at Legendary Home Loans, 850. Gosh, I'm just so Tallahassee focused. Sorry, guys. 844 FSU loan, 844 FSU loan. I think we hit 500 all-time loans to these dudes. An amazing experience. I'm two of them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm working on trying to become 501 or wherever we are myself on a project in Virginia, but nonetheless, I mean, it's just been an incredible experience. I've got a list that I'll try to have ready for probably not next podcast, but the one after that, of just people that have recently gotten a loan. Just been incredible. And Shannon's the best, and Chad is kind of orchestrating the whole thing with a level of passion and drive for Florida State athletics that you're not really going to see held by, I don't know, anybody else out there. So great people to work with, great people to have confidence and faith in, one of the larger transactions that you're going to enter into in life. The legendary team lives up to their name, and we couldn't speak more highly of them.
No doubt about it. You guys do a tremendous job. Tom's question is kind of related. Isn't the only reason FSU fans are flipping out in recruiting because Florida just had a huge weekend? I don't think it's the only reason, but it's certainly an inflection point that, like, you see your neighbor, putting up a huge project. You're like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And you see a lot of these official visits, particularly in the front seven. That's the only real area I'm concerned about. and I like they failed last year in front seven recruiting, right? Like we got told how bad our rating was on some of these guys, and yet like some of these guys didn't make any of the practice reports in the fall for a reason, or in the spring for a reason. They at least tried at D end last year.
Yeah, you just
right?
lost your difference maker.
Yeah, but I mean, at linebacker, I don't. I mean, they got Nicholson thanks to Derek Ray. I'm not, whatever. I think Florida is the main reason FSU fans are flipping out right now. Tom's probably right about that. Maybe not the only, but probably the main one. Sean kind of dogpiles this and says, how badly are Clemson, Miami, and Florida going to abuse our front seven in the future? I think Graham nailed it, right? If it stays this way and you sign zero, Nicholson last year was the only guy in the top 247 in the front seven signed. This year on track to sign zero. Then they will abuse you. Or unless you get really, really good job in the portal, again, that you could hold your own against those teams. Again, like it's June. It's not time to like freak out.
June. I just love the mentality of a college football fan. It is,
dude, they're passionate.
Where is it that we can freak out? Okay, I found the area. I get it, and I love it, and it's the reason why this and many other media products that have to do with Florida State football are successful as they are. But it's too funny. Jeff, you're right, but there was a consistent theme in the questions today. Jeff asked, why are people freaking out about recruiting? Florida State has shown portal is the way of the future. Interesting conversation here. I mean, you always have to be able to do well at high school. We know that. Yes, portal is the way of the future. I'm not trying to pat myself or the battle's in on the back when I say this. I don't know that we will have a period where I think the economics of the market are starting to shift significantly. The portal is going to be a very different place to operate in within the future, and not as though it was easy this year. But people see the value in retention and selectively working in the portal, and that's going to be a different landscape as people adjust and course correct. So I think Florida State's going to have a great opportunity in the portal. Mike Norvell's personality, I think, particularly fits to portal recruiting, in the fact that he can have a very quick, honest, and authentic conversation with you, and that's either going to land or not. And then both sides can make an adjustment quickly from there. So I'm not going to say Florida State's going to go away from the portal. There are some strengths there, and they seem to particularly be able to make some evaluations that other staffs haven't previously. But I would not rest yourself on the idea that Florida State's going to go in and beat the hell out of everybody else that's in the portal for each season, because that's just what they do.
I know you're a big economics guy. Are you familiar with the first mover advantage theory?
Yes, very much so.
So for the audience, I mean, basically, in business, somebody who is like first to market or first to do something oftentimes has like a big advantage over his competitors for a certain period of time and can ride that success. I think Nolecast is actually a pretty good example of this. You working in radio and going to a conference and be like, hey, this thing called podcasts are coming. And I'm like, what's a podcast? You're like, just talk, bro. And we'll talk to each other and record it on our phones and like have our wives make fun of us for talking on our phones to each other, 12 years ago ish, 13 years ago. Anyway, like it is an example, but I think Florida State in the portal is an example of first mover advantage, which you will have diminishing returns from first mover advantage and have to continue to evolve and improve as others take a look at what you're doing. Like they've exploited the market inefficiency through the use of the portal so far. And I think that they will always probably be pretty good at the portal because of their established reputation as being able to ingratiate those kids into their culture, right? When they get on campus, give them a fair shot, right? And teach them quickly. I think your point about some of the market inefficiencies of the portal certainly is going to apply as other schools try to attack it. Maybe not quite the extent, but like maybe, some schools decide they're going to take 3 or 4, whereas they took 0 before, particularly the high-end schools, if they're going to do so. I also do think that teams will be doing a better job of locking up, is kind of a weird term, of locking in their future players or their players to where they're not hitting, like the good ones, so they're not hitting the portal, right?
Mhm.
So I think we saw that some this year. I don't know that this year's portal uh, was as talented at the top end as last year's was, to be frank. I think it may have been deeper, but if your goal is to win a national title, you are a team that needs to be caring about the top end. And I don't know that there may not have been a Jared Verse in the portal this year. There certainly was no super high level tackle in the portal this year. You got guys fighting tooth and nail over a kid from Rhode Island that Oregon ultimately beats out Ohio State and a couple of others for. So to circle back to was it Tom that asked this? Who asked this? Jeff
Jeff.
asked this. Excuse me. To circle back, I do think again, and go back to our episode when we talked about how FSU was smart to extend Mike Norvell. I think his coaching ability and the fact that they do the portal well establish a relatively consistent expectation of floor for the program. However, as you improve the roster, right, as the level of talent goes up in the roster, the number of players in the portal who can actually help you goes down. There's an inverse relationship there. For instance, why did Georgia take 0 portal guys last year and 2 this year? There's just very few players who can crack in the portal. There's few players who can crack a national championship level roster, which is the goal. Like winning the ACC is a goal. The ultimate big prize goal is to get to the playoff, be a talented enough roster that your guys can coach it up to take home the big trophy. FSU's done it 3 times in the last 30 years, so it's doable, certainly. So like I don't think the portal is the way of the future. We may be sitting here and thinking, you know what? Honestly, like we already may have hit max portal in Tallahassee. It's possible.
Mhm.
I don't know, but yeah. So I kind of agree with Jeff, but like I think their portal use establishes the floor, right? Like it's hard to see FSU being bad with how good they've been at the portal.
Before we get to to Chris's question, I think Chris was an email question, interesting one. We'll thank our friends at Congruity. CongruityHR.com is the website. Been fantastic for us as a small business. I'm speaking from the perspective of the Nolecast. I have told you that the battle's in. I started working with Congruity, and that has been nothing but fantastic. Means that we don't have to sit there and send wires all day, which is a hell of a thing to take off the workload. But no, I mean, Matt Lewis is exceptional. Got a great team around him. I don't know in the 3 years that we've worked with Matt that I've ever gotten anything other than exceptionally positive feedback from him. So congruityhr.com as always. And if you want to shoot me a direct message or something else as far as a third-party introduction, I am happy to do so. So a big thank you to our friends at Congruity. Chris asked, does Mike Norvell think he has already made it? Does he realize how far his roster is?
This had to be an email because I didn't put this one in the doc. Okay.
This had to be an email. Does he think he's already made it? Does he realize how far his roster is from where he needs to be to win a national championship? Winning the ACC is a goal, not the goal. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we use that term on this show a lot. No, like guys, Mike Norvell is not dumb. I'm relatively certain that like if you truth serum him, there are certain teams out there that go into the matchup, he'd be like, yeah, we're in trouble for this one. Now maybe just one this year. Maybe it's just the team in Athens, right? Or maybe the team in Columbus. Who knows? I don't think that he thinks this roster is like in its final form at all. Like there's no way. I think he knows that he has a pretty good ball club this year with a chance to go win the ACC, and like even though you'd be an underdog, I think in certain playoff matchups, there's no rule that says like the dog has to lose. Like there's a rule that says it will lose more often than it wins, but there's no rule that says it has to win to lose. No, like I mean, you don't think Mike thinks he's already made it, do you? Like
I mean,
he's
I think
competitive.
I had to laugh. It's just kind of preposterous, dude. That not that I know Mike Norvell at some great level. I don't. Yeah, Mike Norvell in complacency or whatever he's made it could be interpreted as. I don't. I would give the strongest possible pushback on. I don't know if you watch the climb videos. Some of them are great, but there's a
Yeah,
clip in the most recent one where his daughter is trying to describe her dad's energy levels, and she's literally just like, "My dad is like." And
like he runs at like 100 degrees Celsius.
yes, that's what the guy does, man. I'm not. Don't You don't have to worry about Mike Norvell and complacency, and I'll just leave it at that. It's something else. So yeah, the ACC is a goal, not the goal. But you need to win the ACC first before you start to look at any other real massive goals out there, and you need to become the a dominant or the dominant force in this conference again if you're going to then go on to look at trying to take down Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, etc., or at least teams with that level of talent roster. So Chris, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate the email. There's aspects of that question that are a little wild, but nonetheless it's appreciated.
Brian says since I'm the one on cover 3,
I think this was probably reference to you.
Yeah. Has said on cover 3 repeatedly that nobody works his staff as hard as Mario Cristobal does on the recruiting trail. Is that a shot at Mike? No, I think it's just a factual statement. Like, you talk to guys that have worked for Cristobal, like, they know how hard he works them. I don't think Mike Norvell works his staff as hard as Mario does in recruiting. In fact, I know it. I think guys on the Mike staff would tell you that. Like, I think they have better work-life balance when it comes to, like, that's not saying that they're lazy or that they don't work hard, right? At all. Like, Cristobal has a reputation of like grinding the hell out of his guys. Basically, everybody I've talked to that's ever worked for him, it like, the guy's just a maniac about recruiting. He sends all of his text messages himself, and he's carrying on like 50 or 60 separate text conversations starting at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
you hear the stories about it. So I mean, do I think Mike could work his staff harder in recruiting? I do. If you're going to keep the level of recruiter quality on at some positions on the staff, I think you could work them harder. Yeah, I mean, if you want me to be honest about it, but that's not a shot at Mike or at Billy or Nick Saban or Kirby. Like, it's not like just the hardest working in the state. I mean, that's Mario's reputation. It's like how the guy wins. You don't hire Mario Cristobal and be like, I'm going to get some great in-game management here. Like, probably not, right? Like, that's he busts his ass recruiting wise and loves recruiting. I think Mike loves coaching ball, honestly. And I think he understands that you have to get players in order to win at this level. But like, to me, Mario's kind of more of a recruiter. I think Mike's more of a ball coach. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you have the right mix on staff of good recruiting.
Before we get to the final 2 questions of today's show, we'll thank our friends at Charlie Park. Charlie Park Rooftopbar.com is the website. I am working on something with Matt Thompson. We'll have it by the end of the week as far as us partnering with their Orlando tailgate that they're doing for the LSU game. If it's my understanding, it is it's going to be a great spot, very close to the stadium there, and I believe there'll be a indoor / air conditioning component of it, which if you are outside in Orlando first week of September, that's probably going to be fairly critical. So conditioning of the air in bathrooms become a vitally important aspect of those things, and look forward to telling you, the Nolecast listener, more about what we're doing with our great partners For the Table Restaurant Group and what we're doing, particularly for the LSU tailgate. But as always, Charlie Park, best rooftop bar in Tallahassee, without a doubt. And we thank them as always for the support that they've given this podcast since the first day that we pressed record.
All right, how many we have left here? 1, 2.
We got 2.
I think so, yeah.
If I am seeing this right. Second to last question comes from David. Says the difference in the offensive and recruiting and the defensive recruiting has to open Mike's eyes that his staff has different streaks and weaknesses, right?
I love that. I love the modifier.
I made a,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
made a, I made an in-fly edit there.
We will take
Yes.
your question. We may not take a question verbatim. Yeah, yeah. Again, I think it comes back to like what Graham said. If it continues, right? If this disparity continues, then yeah, I think he'd have to take a look at it and be like, what are we doing? What are we doing on offense that we're not doing on defense? Right? Uh, we're not winning on offense and losing on defense. We're not NILing on offense and not NILing on defense. So like but like I will say, while I agree with you as far as like you got to judge it on the final results, I do think the ability to connect, establish relationships, and get kids on campus over the summer is something you can evaluate. And if Mike determines there's a disparity between offense and defense, and I mean, really, how can you not? Then I think that should be a factor that that he uses in evaluating his moves, right? Kevin says, Bud has said the Randy Shannon promotion was a bad idea from the start, and that keeping Adam Fuller is a gamble. But does it even matter how well the defense plays if the recruiting will be this poor? This is kind of the same question. I get. Yes, it definitely matters some. Like if they come out and play lights out, and Mike Norvell's like, all right, Adam Fuller and Randy Shannon are the reason that this is a top 5 defensive unit in the country or something. I think you're going to cut these guys more slack than if they, you know, play in like a top 20 defense, but recruit to like a top 25 only level on defense. Yeah, guys, it definitely matters. Like all the factors matter. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We got to get questions. This is kind of depressing. Let's do some like
Question.
questions from the live
I
chat.
mean, you've got different pieces there that can recruit fairly well. I mean, I think Papuchis obviously suffered a tough loss at the end of last year's recruiting
Papuchis
cycle.
at least tries.
Yeah.
Like he's texting big time kids, offering like nobody's having to tell him, "Hey, John, like you want to go ahead and offer some high level kids." I'm not convinced that's that way up and down the lineup. Like I think he's tried and lost, but he's at least tried. Like you said, I mean, the Falk thing last year was really tough, right? He tried on Nigel Lee Kelly.
Yeah,
I mean, no prize for second place, but
probably should have won that one. But yeah, it's just the way it plays out. So yeah, we'll see. A lot of these questions will resolve themselves, and I think you're right that this summer period does offer us a kind of unique. Like if this is horse racing, it's a good quarter mile mark. And I'm not saying it's a quarter mile into the race. It's just a place where you can have a decent idea as to where these horses are. And if the end of the race looks like it looks like right now, then yeah, I'd expect some things to be addressed. But we'll watch it play out, and the interesting tone from the fan base this morning. We'll have some, continue to take listener questions and kind of see where the fan base shifts on this. And if it does, that'd be a good thing, probably, because there'll be some documented wins on the recruiting trail to maybe move some people off where they are right now.
Ricardo Castro, how much coffee is too much coffee? I drink a lot of coffee during the season. I try to drink less in the off season so that it has the effect.
Yeah. It's not a plug at all, but for me, it's the Celsius equation that I have to run. So,
I know Pate has told this story on Late Kick before. If you listen to Josh or not, we're pretty blessed at 24/7 to have like two of the biggest shows out there, and I don't think he had worked in an office before that had an espresso machine. So this is back at the old, like the Brentwood 24/7 sports office. And he's told some version of the story, but you guys will get a kick out of this. And it only did espresso. Like I think the Americano button was broken. Anyway, but I'm watching him. I never met this guy. He and I both got hired about the same time, right before the pandemic, and we're pretty blessed to get in. So I don't know if we're here if they wait a couple more months. And he's filling up his cup with espresso shots to get a full cup of coffee. And I'm like, okay. And yeah, he was like, I could like hear the air in my ears. It was, it was bad.
Well, that Ricardo may be the answer to your question. When you're subbing out espresso for coffee, and when you get to the point where you can hear the air in your ears, that's something else. Now I love what Josh does, and my YouTube algorithm has picked up on it. I promise you, this is always one of the first couple of things that's suggested.
Bill says, how much negative recruiting of Alex Atkins head coaching prospects after the season are affecting offensive line recruiting? I would say like not that much. Ultimately, like I'm sure it gets kicked around, but like people negatively recruited Alex Atkins for other things too, right? Like you should have seen some of the memes that like were sent to kids when Norvell first hired him because he hadn't coached at the Power 5 level before, right? Like negative recruiting happens on pretty much every kid, right? Or every coach. So I can't say it doesn't happen. I think it probably absolutely happens. But I mean, you'd rather have your coach be negatively recruited that he's going to like get a big head coaching job than not, because it means you got a stud, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think FSU should wish that some of these other coaches it has on staff are getting like negatively recruited in that way. Antoine Stone says he's heard they're negative recruiting Odell, saying he's about to retire. His development speaks for itself. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's out there. That's
how long
also
has that been around?
that you took the words right out of my mouth. That's
Sorry.
that's something that's been said for a decade. So, I wouldn't get too overly worried about that.
Does landing Charles Lester, Booker Pickett, and LJ McCray change how you view defensive recruiting? Yes, some. I think if you whiff on those guys, then there's going to be a lot of conversation. If you want to recruit to a national title level, it's like those guys don't take any more 3 stars in the class, or maybe like one more, and land more players in the top 247. We know defensive recruiting rankings are really good. Freaks athletically translate to good defensive players.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of scheme your way to points. It's very hard to scheme your way to stops within reason. So you need to get to freaks. So it's like those guys plus more that they would need before I think you're like on the right track with defensive recruiting. No, Pate is not drinking that kind of coffee on the air anymore. No, that was, I think, a one-time thing. We had some other ones. Dax K asks, Jordan leaves, where do you go from there? Do we pick up a portal quarterback and have the young guys compete? I think Rodemaker's going to have a shot at the job, assuming he progresses well this year, right? I don't know, like if Duffy and Glenn, maybe Duffy possibly, but maybe they go portal. Like I talked to him about this the other day. I was like, you don't want to have the reputation as always going to the portal. It would be good if you develop some of your guys from inside the program. If you don't think any of those guys can get you to maintain a high level of winning, then hit the portal. But like, I don't know that I would go to the portal just to get a guy to take me from like 9 wins to 10 wins. I would go to the portal if there's a guy who's like, he really increases your shot of winning the ACC and making the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. Otherwise, I think you develop with it. Or maybe Luke comes in and does a really good job and wins the job as a freshman. I guess it's possible.
Khalil Young says Marvin Jones Jr. hurt more than anything. I can't lie. I was broken. I think he's a D offensive end and a 4-down front, not in Georgia's 3-down, but that's me. No, I mean, that was a tough recruitment. And this is the time that we said at the time you're going to start to feel it. And I don't even think Rising Spear was around. So I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody when I say this. But like, the Marvin Jones Jr., and I've referenced this, I think I referenced this a year ago before I had anything to do with NIL or NIL. Although the two do happen to be related. Like, I think you were 2 times behind Alabama and 4 times behind what Georgia put out there. So that kind of goes to the point where I'm saying you don't necessarily have to be the most competitive, but you do have to be competitive. Now that was a issue from like the earliest iteration of name, image, and likeness. And uh, just see what the ramifications of that as you go down the line. But yeah, Marvin Jones Jr. would be a massive piece on this defense right now, and that's one that, as we predicted, you're going to start to feel in 23 and 24.
I
So
mean, they have been in it for this is why people are like, why don't you get on, D end recruiting like you do linebacker recruiting? The results have been the same. The methodology is not. They have been in it for Falk. They were legitimately in it for Nigel Leak. Obviously, Marvin Jones. Shoot, probably another guy I'm missing. Like you, you can't show me like the big time linebackers that they went down to the wire for. They really don't exist. They were
mhm.
not in it for any of those. So yeah, like again, the results have been the same. The reasons have been different,
Yeah.
and the process has been different. I actually I gotta go throw some makeup in my hairline,
There you
so that
go.
so
Okay.
I can get on the air.
The
You probably
honesty.
you probably need a nap, man.
I need something, definitely. So,
Oh man.
an hour and 6 minutes into it. Great to be able to be back as a full Nullcast. Thank you for all the support. Great to have as many live consumers of the product as we do, and a big shout out to all the OG pod listeners as we thank them, as they're still kind of the spine of this operation from a content conception or from a content consumption standpoint. So, till next time, big thank you for myself, Bud, everybody associated with the Nullcast. Talk to you soon.